Good afternoon and welcome to CEC Gurukul lecture. In the series on sociology of kinship, today we are going to discuss on a case study of anthropology which is going to contest the universal understanding of family. The title of the family is the family universal with the understanding of the Nayar case. Now when we look into the family as an institution, most of the time we have been able to understand family as functional, as fulfilling the reproductive, sexual, educational and economic unit. Now there could be a problem in this because there is a kind of a Western perspective of understanding family. Now how do we use this definition of the family or the nuclear family as universal when we look into a number of variants, a number of alternate ways of understanding family? And in order to understand family as an institution where reproduction is the most important function, we need to understand the institution of marriage. And an exemplary anthropological case is the Nayar case, which is often referred to as contesting the Western understanding of family. Because what we try to understand is that the Nayar case is a strict test of anthropology on understanding of marriage, as it completely dispenses with the child care function so strongly emphasized in Western understanding and differs in its concept of sexual exclusiveness and propriety. So for the Western anthropologist, Nayar appeared to be a kind of exclusive in terms of kind of providing an exception to the idea of a patriarchal, patrilineal society, because it was a society of the matri clan where the females were owning the property and were also kind of understanding the system of inheritance and property. Now, when we go into the understanding of Nayar, we need to understand who are the Nayars. The Nayars are an upper caste group who organized politically into small kingdoms and territory into localized matrilineal descent group. Nayars are land-owning warrior caste. Their estates are held by cooperation made up of kinsmen related in the female line. And many a time, one of the contestation is obviously in terms of who is the owner of this property. The property is inherited through female line, but most of the time it is the sister's brother or mother's brother who are kind of considered as having kind of political power or controlling it. And therefore, we could kind of refer to the matrilineal puzzle given by Audrey Richard. But then there are a lot of debates which could have argued that this is only kind of an assumption and not necessarily found in the matrilineal society. Today's lecture, we're going to understand whether the definition of the marriage as given in notes and queries of definition fits into understanding the marriage institution of Nayar. And in that context, we're going to refer to Kathleen Gore, rejection of this traditional definition and reconstructing or redefining a new definition which fits the Nayar system. Now, if we refer to Melina Moore, who's also kind of talked about the Nayar rituals and the rites, he refers to three main reasons why Nayar marriage is of interest. Number one, the definition of marriage. And as we will discuss, there are two kinds of ceremonies which is generally discussed in anthropological literature. The first is the Tali rite or the Tali Ketu Kalyanam, which is the tying of the tali or a gold chain when the girls about to achieve puberty. And the second is the Sambandham, which in general is known as the ceremony of the visiting husband. Now here we have two rituals rather than the one universal definition given in the notes and queries. Now can we call both as being subject to the idea of forming a union between two individuals, and there is a legitimacy through the female? called, and can this, the combination of the two rituals, be called marriage? The second reason why Nayar becomes an exceptional case study is that it is making reference to group marriage or polyandry, where the relation is not necessarily between a man and a woman, but between a number of men with a particular woman. So there is one woman who would be having multiple visiting husband. The third reason why marriage among Nayar becomes interesting is to understand the institution of hypergamy and the intervarna hypergamy. What is hypergamy? It is a practice whereby the attempt is to get a partner of a higher caste. So we will discuss how hypergamous marriage was central to maintaining the caste purity of the Nayar society. And therefore, when we kind of look into the Nayar society or the Nayar marriage, we see there are three traditional transactions or three kinds of exchange of partners. The first, which is the ritual husband, and this is kind of only done just prior to the women starting her physiological transformation or coming through the process of menstruation. The second is the visiting husband, which is when a woman becomes capable of becoming fertile or is declared as a woman. She has relationship, sexual relation with a number of men from the subcaste. This becomes a formal relationship that requires the man to present her with gift and but until the relationship is terminated. However, neither the ritual husband nor the visiting husband has any obligation to support the women economically. The man can send a kind of lumber of gift to express the acceptance of the legitimacy of his paternity. Establishing childbirth rights. When the woman has kind of conceived the child, one of the men with who was the visiting husband must acknowledge paternity by making gift to the women and the midwife. Now, many a time, patrilineal society, the paternity is established prior to the marriage. Here, it is happening after the birth of the child. Once a man has accepted possible paternity of a child, he may remain interested in the child's welfare but holds no real obligation to the child or the mother, because the child belongs to the mother and her group. However, if no man claims paternity, then it is assumed that she had a relationship with a lower caste, and which is kind of termed as hypogamy, which is not legitimate in the matrilineal claim, and therefore she would have to be expelled or she would lose the membership of the matrilineal kin. So the paternity is established through gift only, and it is not necessary that it is the man who is the biological father. It could be different. It is a pater, that is, it's a social father. In case of doubtful paternity, any man who had been currently visiting the woman could be forced by the assembly to pay her delivery expenses. But if no man of appropriate rank could be cited as potential father, women and child were expelled from the lineage and caste. So when we look into Edmund Leach saying that fatherhood is absent, that would be incorrect according to Kathleen Gore. It is only the idea that the paternity is established after the birth of the child. Now, after understanding legitimacy of the child and establishment of paternity, it's important to understand the social structure of the Nayar community, which is generally maintained through hypergamous marriage. So, hypergamous marriage among the Nayar was institutionalized. Mostly women married upward. That is, a woman from a low caste would have to marry a man of the upper caste, else he would be excommunicated and her sexual relation would be considered as illegitimate. So men formed sambandhan with common Nayar women. So women were commoners, the men could be from the royal lineage or from the other upper caste. Nayar women formed sambandham with chiefly royal or Nambudri Brahmin because they were upper in the social strata. Among the Nambudri families, who are the upper caste Brahmins of the Kerala society, only eldest son was allowed to marry and beget children from Nambudri women. Younger son could form sambandhan with women of any subcaste. Hypergamous union also involved periodic gifts and delivery expenses as equal union between commoners of the same subcaste. However, in hypergamous union, husband of the higher caste may not eat in his wife's house or touch his wife or children during the day to maintain ritual purity. So we see that the institution of marriage is not only for the purpose of establishing legitimacy or for establishing paternity. The hypergamous marriage is necessarily an indication of maintaining the strata, the caste purity, and therefore there could be an alternate way of understanding. So the Nayar men were not permitted to use final terms to address the Nambudri husbands of their women folk, nor did the Nambudri husband address the brothers of their wives as affines. So we do not have a universal categorical way of identifying who are the affines or who are biological relations. Leach's statement that Nayar marriage served to establish a socially significant relationship between the husband and his wife's brother is rejected by Kathleen Gore. According to Kathleen Gore, the Sambandham union did not establish a socially significant relationship between brothers-in-law, and they had no institutionalized obligations to one another by virtue of the particular Sambandham. A Sambandham union with a Nambudri Brahmin was of the same character as a Sambandhan union with a Nayar of equal subcaste. This is because the Brahmin husband, like the Nayar, was responsible for payment at the birth of a child to his Nayar wife. However, according to Kathleen Gore, the point of view of Nambudris were different. Among Nambudri Brahmin, only eldest sons were permitted to marry Nambudri women and beget children for their own children. However, when we look into this idea of the marriage between the Nayar and the Nambudri, there have been a lot of argument or contestation, and the question is whether we call it as a marriage or is it a concubinage. So only marriage to the Nambudri women with Vedic rites could be regarded as true marriage because it was hypergamy. And the Sambandhan union with Nayar women were a kind of concubinage. So it was not kind of identified into the category of marriage. There are certain factors according to which it is not simply a kind of concubinage. Before entering into a union, there is a ceremony that is socially accepted. He is also accepted as the legitimate father of the child. Without getting into such a union, a younger son of a Nambudri household can never become a father, as they cannot marry a Nambudri wife because this right is only given to the eldest son. This is in turn so because the property goes to the eldest son, and so no one else should have children, as it will lead to fragmentation of the property. And that is the reason why the Nambudri younger sons are allowed to have sambandhan with Nayar women. Among Nayar, men do not have any rights over the children because it's a matrilineal society, and the wife do not take money from their visiting husbands to take care of the child. The child is not the obligation of the father. It belongs to the mother's matrilineal group, and it is the responsibility of the females to take care of the child. The rights and obligation obtaining between spouses and between fathers and their children can be classified into two categories: those of the tali right and those of the sambandham. The tali right tires had no right in his ritual's wife's children, except that they should observe pollution at his death. So the man who tied the tali did not have any economic or ritual obligation towards the wife and the child. Only to maintain perpetual affinity, the women and her children would continue to perform the last rituals of the ritual husband on his death. Whereas in Sambandhan union, it seems clear that the husband had no exclusive rights in his wife. Just by having a sambandhan did not make him entitled to the property of his wife. He had only in common with other men sexual privilege with the wife, which might withdraw at any time. So there's lot of kind of flexibility or openness in terms of the sexual relation as opposed to the monogamous relationship between man and women, whereas Rattle Brown has mentioned that in patrilineal society, the husband has right over rem over his wife. In other words, it kind of wife belongs to the husband. Her labor, her mobility, is kind of a property of the husband. And that could lead to the idea of the subordinate status of women in a patrilineal society. Whereas in a matrilineal society, the husband does not have any right over the wife. The wife, on the reverse, has the right to get gifts from the husband on festivals. And however, the gift's value was of no significance. It was just important to establish the paternity, and therefore the gift became symbolically significant. The Sambandham father had no rights in his wife's children. When we look into the understanding of marriage, and we've seen that there are two kind of rituals which is performed, when we look into the Nayar union, how can we describe it as marriage, or do we not describe it as such? Kathleen Gore regarded Nayar union as a form of marriage for two reasons. Number one, it was a plural union, that is, the partners were more than two. It was one woman with a multiple of visiting husbands. The plural union were customary, mating was not promiscuous. Sexual relations were forbidden between members of the same lineage. So there were certain rules and regulations that worked in order to ensure the union was between certain eligible kind of the group. It was also forbidden for two men of the same property group wittingly to have relation with one woman, or two women of the same property group to have relation with one man. Relations were absolutely prohibited between a Nayar woman and a man of lower caste or subcaste. So there were certain kind of system to regulate the union, though it was a group union. And therefore, when we look into whether the Nayar had a system of marriage, and we very clear that the Oaths and Queries definition is not sufficient enough to understand the Nayar institution, it was important to arrive at a redefinition of the institution of marriage. Kathleen Gore classifies Nayar union as a clear case of group marriage and calls such union as marriage because they involve the concept of legal paternity. Though there was not established in the same manner as in the other cases, but yet paternity was established. Such a form of group marriage will not fit the Notes and Queries definition of a union between a man and a woman, such that children born to the women are recognized legitimate offspring of both parents. Legitimacy in the case of Nayar requires both a ritual father and a legitimate genitor of appropriate rank, though a child may have more than one legal genitor. So the idea is that it is not a monogamous and it is not one-to-one relationship, and it is not one process of establishing a genitor. It is first symbolically announcing the significance of marriage through the tali rite, and then accepting the sambandhan relationship with the member of the subcaste. When we look into the new definition, Kathleen Gore provides a new definition that is cross-culturally varied and fits the Nayar case. Marriage is a relationship established between a man and a woman and one or more other person, which provides that a child is born to the women under circumstances not prohibited by the rule of the relationship, is accorded full birthright common to normal members of a society or social stratum. So if we look into this definition and kind of break it up, we see that there are certain kind of addition to the notes and query definition. The note and query definition says that it's a union between a man and a woman. Nayar institution kind of gets an extension to the definition, and Kathleen Go adds another phrase, that is, it could be a union between a man, a woman, and one or more other person. So it could be a man and more than one woman, or it could be a woman and more than one man. It could be man with relationship with multiple men. So it is kind of alternate ways of understanding the institution. The second was in terms of legitimacy, and this is adding that the child born to the women under circumstances not prohibited by the rule of the relationship. So we just discussed that it is a plural marriage, it is a group marriage, but there are certain rules or there are certain restrictions in terms of with whom one could have the union. The third component of notes and queries definition was the establishing paternity. And here Kathleen Gore adds the third, that is accorded full birthright common to normal members of the society. So the union is legitimately established and the child is recognized as the son of both the parents, mother and the legitimate genitor, and therefore is kind of given full birth membership. This definition given by Kathleen Gore does not state that full birth status right cannot be acquired by a child except through marriage of mother, but only that marriage provides for the acquisition of this right. So it's just turning it around. It's that the status need not necessarily be established after the marriage of the mother. It could be established prior to it. So there are kind of two ways of looking into the idea of establishing membership of a group. She also explains the phrases for a better understand the definition. One or more person has been used in place of a man to bring into the definition both group marriage of the Nayar type and fraternal polyandry. Fraternal polyandry is when the husbands or the men having sexual relation with one woman are brothers, and women to women marriages. Under circumstances not prohibited by rules of the relationship, Kathleen Gore meant that it is possible, for example, that there are patrilineal societies in which a husband may legally repudiate a child illicitly begotten upon his wife by another man without divorcing the wife herself. Nayar, therefore, constituted a clear case of group marriage. The Tali rite initiates each individual Nayar girl a state of marriage to collectively of men of appropriate caste. Pre-puberty rites are of symbolic significance of sexual and procreative functions. Girl's natal family surrenders this function and offers it to somebody else. A girl would not procreate within her same natal family. Thus, her natal family sacrifices her procreative functions for the other caste. And in that manner, we will see that women play a dominant role in maintaining the caste hierarchy. Third, sexuality of women is said by all men of same caste, though prominence is given to the ritual husband. When we conclude, we see that the Nayar case elaborates the understanding of marriage beyond sexual union, paternity and legitimacy. It does at the same time impose an important set of rules and fulfill functions that are quite understandable in the context of a lineage and caste-based society. The rights and regulations reflect and enforce a morality and uphold standards of hereditary purity. They represent and underscore long-term alliances among localized matrilineage, which along with caste group constitute the core component of the society. Nayar marriage did not institutionalize the family of one father, mother and their children as an economic and legal unit. However, they gave ritual and legal recognition to both concept of marriage and paternity. Therefore, marriage is symbolic in nature. It does not deal alone with sexual relation, but also with caste purity, recruitment of caste, and political significance. Marriage is a cross-cultural phenomena that should be investigated with different circumstances under which marriage becomes invested with various other kinds of rights and obligations. And with this, we kind of understand how the Nayar questions the universal understanding of family. For reference, it is advised to read the work of Kathleen Gore, published in 1968, Is the Family Universal? The Nayar Case, in an edited work by Norman W. Will and Ezra F. Vogel. The title of the book is A Modern Introduction to the Family, New York. The page numbers are 80 to 96. With this, I come to an end of this lecture. Thank you.